He has been reincarnated as a villainous noble with an abominable personality, a character destined for a ruinous end. His new reality is one of constant torment, where even his own family tramples over him. His brother, Legal, pins him to the ground while his father, Life Validor, looks on with smug contempt. Despite the bruises and humiliation, a fire ignites in his eyes. He grits his teeth, a bead of sweat tracing a path down his temple. A silent, furious vow forms in his mind. Someday, they will all pay. Just you wait. His thirst for vengeance twists into a manic, ecstatic fantasy. He envisions a wicked future where he will surround himself with the ultimate sadistic heroines, a thought that brings a deranged, open-mouthed grin to his face. Meanwhile, in a corridor of the Validor Marquis's residence, two maids stop in their tracks. One asks the other if she heard that, a faint sound like a groan or something being struck. The other maid, Rem, looks back uncertain. The first maid continues nervously, mentioning that someone always seems to disappear around this time. She speaks of groans heard at night from the basement, where people were once imprisoned when the mansion was a fortress. Rem chides her for letting her mind wander, but the atmosphere remains tense. The source of the sounds is revealed in the dark basement. Rice, the third son of the Validor family, is bound by his wrists, hanging from chains. Before him stands Rem, the very servant meant to obey him, now tasked with whipping him. He looks up, his expression not of fear, but of pure, unadulterated anticipation. A bead of sweat drips down his face as he licks his lips, eagerly awaiting the coming pain. He is Lord Rice Validor. Rice taunts Rem, asking if she truly thought such a minor level of pain could make him submit. Seeing her hesitation, he roars at her to hit him harder. Flustered but resolute, Rem agrees to his demand. With a determined shout, she brings the whip down hard across his back. Rice lets out a sharp cry, a sound that is equal parts pain and ecstasy, echoing through the stone chamber. Suddenly, a wave of alien memories floods Rice's mind. A modern man playing a game called Holy of Fantasy. The original soul is resurfacing. The physical Rice, now utterly bewildered, stops mid-gasp. What was that pathetic voice just now? He asks aloud. Rem freezes, equally confused by his sudden shift in demeanor. He grappled with the sudden, horrifying realization. He had been reincarnated as Rice Validor, the villain of the story. And not just any villain. Rice Validor was the prime example of a throwaway antagonist, a character guaranteed to be defeated by the protagonist in every single story route. The name echoed in his mind with a dreadful finality. Rice, damn it. His sudden change in demeanor drew the worried attention of his maid, Rem, who timidly asked if he was all right. In response, a manic laugh escaped his lips. After finally being reborn, this was the fate he received? He wondered aloud if he was truly all right. He was far from all right. And to make matters worse, this man, Rice Validor, had a particular quirk. He was a die-hard masochist. The humiliation and pain of his situation, which should have been agonizing, instead sent a wave of pure ecstasy through him. He cried out that it was the absolute best feeling, leaving Rem utterly stunned. Sometime later, dressed and sitting alone, the mortification finally set in. He couldn't believe he'd found that situation to be the best. The memory of his past life as a gamer resurfaced, the sheer desire to disappear after regaining his memories mid-humiliation. He recalled ending the acting for the day, only for Rem to question if he even had the right to stop. He cringed, feeling a pang of guilt for the maid, though a small part of him wished he could have enjoyed it more. He lamented his reincarnation into the world of Holy of Fantasy, wishing for a better role. As he looked out over the Validor estate, a crucial memory surfaced. The first time Rice appears in the game is when he picks a fight. The scene shifts to a hallway where a young man with spiky hair furiously confronts Rice, demanding to know what he's doing. Beside the young man, a female student and an instructor with glasses watch with alarm. In response, Rice feigns outrage, twisting the other's words. He bellows, asking if he's being mocked for having only one arm. He points accusingly, remembering the filthy commoner's face from game. This was it. This was the exact moment, the kind of man he was picking a fight with the protagonist out of nowhere. He frantically recalls the various grim fates that befell his character in the game's story routes. In one, he challenges the protagonist and is killed. In another, he borrows power from demons and still loses. In yet another, he tries to touch the heroine and is killed for it. No matter the path, death was the inevitable conclusion. He despairs at having been reincarnated into such a person. And worse, a masochist who finds a thrill in these hopeless situations. But then realization strikes him. There must be a way to live happily. He begins to analyze the differences between his current reality and the game's premise. In the game, the character Rice was a fallen noble who had already lost one arm from the very start. But as he looks down at his own hands, he confirms that he is living in a proper mansion now, and both of his arms are perfectly fine. He understands that these slight differences between himself and the original Rice might be the very key to avoiding that doomed future. The reason the Validor family fell, and the reason his game counterpart lost his arm, becomes his central focus. With newfound resolve, he begins to strategize. Recalling that the game's timeline had detailed notes, he first determines the current date, learning he is about 1 year before the game's story begins. He then meticulously writes down every detail he can remember about the world's setting and future events. His memories turn to the constant monster attacks that plague the region. The primary role of the Validar family was to defend the nation by governing the town of Awater. This town was located near the Forest of Atrocities. A barrier erected by a sage kept the most vicious monsters contained within, turning the forest into a dungeon-like territory, but occasionally, some would spill out. However, the current head of the family, Rice's father, was corrupt. He embezzled funds from a nation that were meant to strengthen and maintain the core. As a result, the soldiers' morale and combat readiness dropped drastically. Because of this, when a large-scale monster outbreak, a stampede, erupted from the forest, the core was completely unable to respond. The Validar defensive line was easily destroyed, allowing devastation to spread to surrounding regions and causing massive losses. Only then were the family's crimes exposed, and they were stripped of their noble title. Meanwhile, in the original timeline that resulted from these events, Rice awakens in a medical bed. He furiously screams at a doctor to fix his arm, still clinging to his identity as the son of the Validar family. The exasperated doctor can only state the impossible truth. His arm cannot be fixed, and he is no longer a noble. He recalled the grim outcomes of the game. No matter which path the protagonist took, he would ultimately die. The worst fate occurred when his pride was exploited by demons, a thought that made Rice clench his fist in frustration. A wave of relief washed over him, and he let out a small, manic laugh. It was a good thing he had regained his memories at this stage. He remembered the protagonist's descent into villainy, committing mass murder and destroying towns just to gain an advantage. Endless evil acts. This recollection sparked an idea. He envisioned the game's structure, seeing a potential survival route that branched away from the certain death of the stampede path. If he could somehow avoid the stampede, he might just escape the doomed fate prescribed by the game. His mind settled on a simple, singular goal. Peeking out from behind a door, his expression hardened with resolve. Now, the only question was how to avoid the stampede. He emerged into a hallway, now wearing a hooded cloak. His sudden appearance startled Rem and another maid. Before they could properly question where he had been, he announced his plan to leave the mansion and get away from the town before the stampede hits. As his hand reached for the door handle, a firm grip seized his shoulder. It was his father, his face contorted with fury. He roared that he would not allow Rice to act freely in the mansion, nor would he permit him to leave the town. Rice stared back, shocked and stammering. The confrontation triggered a vivid memory of his father screaming his name. Snapping back to reality, he found the hallway empty. No one was there. He was left to wonder if the encounter had been real or just a phantom of his memory. Standing alone, he concluded that the root cause of his problems was his current family, the Validar Marquis household. He recalled the 14 years of oppression he had endured as an unwanted child, even being imprisoned. He realized that even with his foreknowledge of the stampede, he was forbidden from leaving and had no means of escape. Desperate, he tried to seek help, approaching a guard to warn him of an impending stampede from the Forest of Atrocities. The guard, however, laughed it off. He dismissed the warning as a joke, reminding Rice that nothing of the sort had happened in 100 years. The guard's casual dismissal struck him with a profound sense of hopelessness. If he couldn't run away or rely on anyone for help, what was he supposed to do? He stood alone, trapped by his circumstances. He realizes morning has arrived, having been lost in thought all night. Deciding to clear his head, he gets up to get some fresh air. Stepping onto a balcony, he looks out over the sprawling town of Validar, struck by its immense size. He leans on the railing, recalling that in the game this town was home to potential allies, including characters he was fond of. He wonders if they might be somewhere in the city right now. The thought turns sour as he remembers the constant sadness in their eyes whenever they spoke of their home. They had all lost something precious in the coming monster stampede. This grim knowledge fuels a new resolve. He knows the crisis is coming and refuses to ignore it. If he cannot rely on anyone, he will stop the stampede with his own power, though a flicker of doubt crosses his mind as he recalls his character in the game was notoriously weak. He remembers the details of that weakness. While the character Rice had a rare aptitude for powerful spatial magic, he never trained properly and would always run out of magical energy, failing even his first spell due to insufficient mana. But this time, he has the knowledge for his past life, where he raised countless characters to their maximum potential. Unsure who reincarnated him, he vows to use this knowledge to resist his fate. With new determination, he decides he will train properly. A few days later, his resolve brings him to the family dining hall. His father, Life, seated with his mother and brother Legal, looks up in surprise, questioning Rice's sudden and uncharacteristic interest in serious training. He stands before the assembled family, his poised mother, the Legal wife, his father, Life, the family's eldest son, and his brother, Legal, the second son, who watches him with a familiar sneer. However, it is the true head of the Validar family, Lord Lubra Validar, who breaks the silence. Fixing Rice with a severe gaze, he demands to know if Rice understands why he has been summoned. He confirmed Rice's suspicions, asking if he had been studying magic lately. The question sent a chill through Rice, whose position in the Validar family was precarious. He was the child of a servant his father had taken, and his mother had been killed by the legal wife after his birth. Only the belief that a curse befalls those who kill their own children had allowed him to live, devoid of any affection. Stuttering, Rice admitted he had, asking what of it. In response to the hesitant admission, Lord Lubra's face twisted in fury. He lunged forward, his hand gripping the collar of Rice's shirt as he roared that magic is a power reserved only for nobles. The force of the outburst sent Rice flying across the room. As his grandson tumbled through the air, Lubra bellowed that a bastard like him had no right to even think of learning it. From his seat at the family table, Rice's father, Life, watched with cold disdain. He ordered Rice to listen well and do only as he was told, sneeringly asking if the boy truly thought that using magic would somehow make him a proper noble. Scrambling to his knees, Rice pleaded desperately before his assembled family. He begged for permission to study magic, explaining that he wanted to fight with it, unlike the soldiers who only swing weapons. His brother, Legal, scoffed that someone so useless shouldn't be making demands. Life chuckled in agreement, announcing that he had a good idea. Lord Lubra considered this for a moment. Legal then elaborated on his father's plan. If Rice was so eager to be useful, they should force him to train in swordsmanship alongside the common soldiers. That way, Legal added with a smirk, the fool would learn his place. Horrified, Rice immediately shouted his refusal, crying out that he didn't want to do sword training. His protest was silenced as Lord Lubra pointed a commanding finger at him, declaring that starting the next day, Rice would train daily with the soldiers. As the command hung in the air, Lubra lunged and seized Rice's face in a crushing grip. Panic flared in Rice's mind. If he couldn't learn magic, he would be utterly defenseless against the coming catastrophe. With a final exertion of dominance, he shoved Rice violently away. The young man cried out as he was thrown to the hard floor. From the side, the maid Rem could only watch in wide-eyed shock. Looming over his fallen nephew, Life Valadur smirked with satisfaction. He told Rice he should be grateful. Behind him, Legal shared the cruel, triumphant expression, savoring the moment of humiliation. He pressed his boot firmly onto Rice's head, grinding him into the floor. With a smug grin, he declared that his son should be thankful for receiving permission to train at all. Still pinned to the ground, Rice internally seethed. He vowed he would never submit to being stepped on by such a vile man, though he wryly admitted he wouldn't mind if it were a beautiful girl. Changing his approach, he turned his desperate gaze towards his mother, pleading with her to at least assign him a renowned knight as an instructor instead of a mere commoner. His father, however, cut in, feigning thoughtfulness. He announced he had a particularly skilled knight in mind, Zangle Dread, the former vice-commander of the Royal Knights, who now served as an instructor for the Valadur family's corps. Rice's hand clenched at the name. Legal sneered, praising his father's decision as perfectly fitting. He mocked Rice, declaring that pairing a half-breed with a commoner ex-knight was an ideal arrangement. The family looked on, relishing the moment. But as he lay on the floor, a flicker of pure triumph crossed Rice's face. Internally, he clenched his fist, celebrating a mission accomplished. His thoughts revealed the truth. His goal from the very start was to train under Zangle, renowned in the game for his exceptional teaching ability. He knew his family would never grant this request willingly. He had therefore used their cruel nature against them. Knowing they were a group of perverts who took pleasure in denying him what he wanted, he deliberately studied a magic guidebook in plain sight, provoking their predictable response. His gambit worked perfectly. He had baited them and guided events precisely to get what he wanted. Zangle assigned as his swordsmanship instructor. Back in the present, his father gloated, demanding words of gratitude. But as he looked down, he was met not with despair, but with a subtle, knowing smirk on Rice's face, leaving the older man utterly bewildered. He endures the mockery of his family. His mother and brother, Legal, laughed derisively, gloating that he can finally become a proper commoner. With a bead of sweat on his brow, Rice forces out a strained, "Thank you, very much." Though his face remains deceptively placid, a dark, vengeful fire ignites in his eyes. He clenches his fist, making a silent, furious vow to pay them back many times over for their cruelty and to make every last one of them cry. This burning desire for revenge fuels his resolve. He envisions a future where he will overcome everything: his idiotic family, the stampede from the forest of atrocities, and the entire doom route that leads to his death. He vows to push himself to the absolute limit in his training to achieve the ultimate happy ending. 2 weeks later, Rice is drenched in sweat from his new, intense training regimen. Just as he is about to continue, Rem approaches him. She hesitantly informs him that a Lady Reem has arrived and suggests that it might be best to reschedule his training. The name startles him. Reem? He thinks, turning abruptly. Rem, seeing his confusion, clarifies that Lady Reem is his fiancée. The word fiancé hits Rice with the force of a physical blow, his eyes widening in shock and disbelief. His mind races, the name finally connecting to a dreadful memory. He had been so focused on his training that he had completely forgotten. He recalls a scene from the game, a fierce woman vowing to defeat Rice Valadur. He realizes with dawning horror that she is not only one of the protagonist's party members, but is the very person who is destined to kill him. As this truth crashes down upon him, he sees her arriving at the estate, already so close. At that very moment, Lady Reem stands before the Valader Manor, forcing a smile onto her face. She nervously touches her own cheeks, her thoughts filled with anxiety as she wonders if she will be able to keep her smile from breaking in front of Lord Rice. A profile emerges of Reem Strait, the woman destined to be Rice's future wife and eventual enemy. Among the many figures in the foretold events, she is one of the most popular. Brilliant, calm, and composed, she is known as a strategist who supports the protagonist, and she also possesses exceptional combat ability. The thought of this fiancé troubles Rice. He recalls that in the original timeline of the game, their engagement had been broken off from the very beginning. As he puzzles over this discrepancy, Rem approaches cautiously, asking what is on his mind. Continuing his internal monologue, Rice notes that his engagement to Reem is, for now, still intact. His thoughts are interrupted by Commander Zangle, who remarks on the Strait family's renowned military prestige and the rumors of Lady Reem's own high skill. Zangle suggests it would be a fine idea for her to observe Rice's training. In response, Rice turns to Rem, who has been standing by silently. He instructs her to personally greet Lady Reem upon her arrival and then come inform him. Startled by the direct command, Rem stammers a deep apology for overstepping, but Rice simply thanks her, stating her presence was helpful. The maid, still flustered, quickly excuses herself and hurries away from the training grounds, confirming she understood the order. Watching her leave, Rice's expression hardens. He realizes her stiff fear of him has not yet disappeared. He reflects that ever since regaining his memories, he has tried to repair his relationships, but people's impressions are not so easily changed. He recalls his past self, the masochistic noble, who intentionally made unreasonable demands of the maids, like ordering them to clean the floor in a demeaning way, all in a twisted effort to make them hate him. This dark reverie is shattered as his father, Life Valader, calls out his name from directly behind him, causing Rice to jump with a startled, flustered expression. He quickly attempts to regain his composure, turning back to his instructor. Stuttering slightly, Rice affirms he is ready and tells Zangle he is counting on him. Zangle, unfazed, asks if they should begin training soon. With that, Zangle claps his hands together decisively. He loudly announces that basic training will now begin, his face a mask of stern focus. 2 weeks after receiving his family's permission, the results of this training are shown. Under Zangle's direct guidance, Rice is now undergoing combat training with weapons, sparring intensely with his instructor. He continued his intense training, lunging forward with daggers held in a reverse grip. His reason for choosing these weapons was simple. They were a favored and powerful choice in the game he remembered. He darted low, aiming to unbalance his instructor, Commander Zangle. His blades met Zangle's sword, but the impact was far heavier than he anticipated. Even a direct strike was deflected with ease, and he grunted with effort as he struggled against the commander's strength. As Zangle pressed the attack, Rice twisted away from the heavy blade, deftly dodging and slipping behind the commander. He believed he had found a clear opening. Zangle, however, was stunned, wondering how Rice could have possibly predicted his move and maneuvered behind him. He caught his breath, sweat beading on his brow as the realization hit him. That was an incredibly close call. Pausing to spar, Zangle commented that Rice's skills must have improved to stop an attack like that, Riley suggesting it was thanks to having an excellent instructor. Rice seemed to agree, but Zangle immediately shut it down, stating that flattery doesn't work on him. Rice earnestly insisted it wasn't flattery. He knew Zangle was a superior teacher because, in the game, training with someone whose instructor skill was at max level greatly increased one's abilities. He felt genuinely fortunate that Zangle was stationed in the city's military. Zangle's expression hardened as he declared that Rice's eyes revealed his true purpose and that he wouldn't go easy on him. It was then that Rice had a chilling realization. The skill's effect depended on its level, and Zangle's was merely instructor skill level 1. His training was barely helping. His mind flashed back to the day after he regained his memories. He had found Zangle and directly requested to be trained in swordsmanship. The commander, taken aback, had asked if there was a problem, to which Rice could only stammer, "No, not exactly," but he knew then that having Zangle become his instructor was an absolute necessity. It was the only way to gain enough power in a short amount of time to stop the future catastrophe he knew was coming, the stampede. In that memory, Zangle had listened and then agreed, but with a condition. Rice must first obtain his family's formal permission to train. With the terms set, the commander extended his hand to seal their arrangement. Back in the present, Rice reflected on the man before him. Zangle had served nobles for years, both in the Kingdom Knights and the city military, and had personally witnessed the corruption of the aristocracy. It was only natural, he mused, that Zangle would be inclined to brush off a request from a noble's youngest son. A few days after his initial sparring session with Zangle, Rice's plan was set in motion at the Valader estate. The memory of how he secured the arrangement was still fresh. He had formally requested that Zangle, having no further objections, be appointed as his instructor. His face, now covered in bandages, was a testament to the difficulty of the task. He reflected that convincing his family had indeed taken some effort, a fact that did not go unnoticed by Zangle. Zangle, seeing the state he was in, finally asked the question that had been lingering. He questioned why Lord Rice would go to such lengths, why he wished to train so badly. Rice acknowledged that he had never truly explained his reasons. To provide that explanation, he unrolled a map and presented a grim scenario. He asked Zangel, as a former Corps commander, to consider what would happen if a monster stampede from the forest of atrocities were to attack their town at that very moment. The hypothetical question struck Zangel with force. He asked if this was simply about not wanting to die. Rice confirmed it with piercing intensity, pleading with Zangel to grant him enough strength to survive. The commander was stunned, admitting he never expected to hear such desperate words from the young lord. Back in the present, with the agreement secured, Rice was eager to begin training immediately. Zangel, however, held up a hand, firmly stating they would not train today. Rice cried out in disbelief, but Zangel simply affirmed that as his instructor, he would fulfill his duty completely. He then explained that Rice must be physically and mentally exhausted from the ordeal of persuading his family. Despite Rice's desperate plea that he needed to grow stronger even one day sooner, Zangel insisted that for today, he must rest. A look of fierce determination settled on Rice's face. This level of commitment was exactly what he wanted. Seeing his resolve, Zangel grinned and clenched his fist, promising that starting tomorrow, he would hold nothing back. And so, he had gained the best possible instructor. To further increase his training efficiency, Rice had already gathered all the equipment he knew from the game to provide stat bonuses, a crucial step in his preparation. He had received the exact basic training effects he expected, but the stat-boosting items he'd gathered weren't as potent as he'd initially hoped, making him nearly despair that the game's rules didn't apply. However, his abilities were improving at an astonishing rate, undoubtedly because of Zangel's direct instruction. In addition to combat training, Zangel assisted him with running to build stamina and exercises to control his magical power. Rice understood that Zangel was only doing this because it was an order, but it gave him the perfect reason to make his instructor utter those specific words. During their sparring sessions, he observed that there wasn't a single wasted movement in Zangel's actions, just as one would expect from a former royal knight. Because of this efficiency, even with his own stats boosted through training with the instructor, his rapid dagger strikes, superior in agility, were effortlessly deflected. He could barely manage to dodge Zangel's counterattacks. Realizing he was being completely outmatched, Rice declared he would throw himself at Zangel with everything he had. The instructor was momentarily surprised by this directness, but Rice explained that this was precisely his goal. As his father, Life Valadur, watched from the side, Rice admitted he hadn't expected Zangel to take his strike head-on. The instructor, looking flustered and sweating, was at a loss for words, prompting Life to ask what was wrong. Before Zangel could answer, the maid Rem rushed over to inform Lord Rice that Lady Reem had arrived at the mansion and he was to come see her. Rice acknowledged the message. As he turned to go, Rem suddenly became flustered, stammering an apology for her boldness and suggesting that perhaps he should change his clothes first. Rice, looking slightly surprised, simply replied that there was no problem going as he was. Her concern was noted, but Rice had other things on his mind. He clenched his fist, realizing he had a proper reason to make Reem hate him. This was something he was now looking forward to. He knew that in the original story, Reem was destined to join the protagonist party and help lead the world to peace. If he, who was supposed to break things off with her, ended up getting along with her instead, the event where she joins the hero's party would disappear. Therefore, his course of action was clear. He steeled his resolve. Even if Reem was his favorite character in his past life, it couldn't be helped. He absolutely needed her to dislike him. Without her, the hero's party would lack the strength to defeat the Demon King, leading to the world's destruction, a far worse outcome than a mere stampede. Putting his thoughts into immediate, cruel action, he confronted her. He dismissed her as his fiancée, insulted the mansion as rustic, and then crudely commented that her only redeeming feature was her unnecessarily large chest. Reem gasped, flustered and shocked by the verbal assault. He continued, telling her to resent him and the difference in their birth status. He then recalled his behavior before regaining his memories. In the past, he had consistently harassed Reem, enjoying the act of looking down on her. It was no wonder their relationship had already worsened. The mere memory of his former shameless self made his skin crawl. As he cringed at the past, Zangel's recent words echoed in his mind, questioning why he would prioritize training over his fiancée. This sparked an idea. He could have Lady Reem observe his training. He imagined her horrified reaction to being dragged into such a situation, cementing her disdain for him. This new level of antagonism felt just right. If he were to be hated, simply getting killed as his character was in the game would defeat the entire purpose. With a clenched fist and a satisfied smirk, he deemed the plan perfect. Despite his confidence, as he and Rem stood before the ornate door leading to Reem's chambers, he felt a tremor of nervousness. He took a steadying breath before proceeding. He entered the room. Reem greeted him with perfect formal poise. "It has been a while, Lord Rice," she said, her voice even as she thanked him for taking the time to see her. He asked if she had any trouble on her way. He was struck by her beauty, even more pronounced in person than on a screen. She confirmed she had none, thanks to a warp stone. He noted the complete lack of emotion in her voice and replied that it was good nothing had happened. She then offered a gentle, placid smile. A jolt went through Rice. He recognized it instantly, the smile he remembered from the game, a smile that was never meant for his character, but for the story's true protagonist. The realization brought a sharp pain to his chest. He had adored her character even before his reincarnation. To finally be here, only to witness something so precious that he had no right to see, was agonizing. A memory of her from a game scene, clad in a swimsuit, flashed in his mind. Another image he felt utterly unworthy of viewing. He stands sweating in his training clothes, the memory of the game's swimsuit scene flashing in his mind. As he grapples with this thought, Reem notices his unusual attire and asks about it. He observes her closely, expecting her to be holding back disgust, thinking he was about to harass her again. Instead of following that impulse, he changes tactics, announcing that there is something he wants her to do. Her flustered reaction to his statement sends a jolt of panic through him. He internally laments that her response is far too endearing. He had hoped for a glare, but this reaction is too much, even for him. Then, a crucial detail from his past life surfaces in his memory. The character Reem was known for being a glutton. As Reem calls his name, trying to get his attention, he quickly dismisses his thoughts, claiming it's nothing. He sits down, and Reem expresses concern that he went out of his way. Rice brushes it off, stating it would be more troublesome if she collapsed from hunger. He then turns to Rem and instructs her to bring the meal he had prepared. The maid understands and departs. Rem returns with a basket of large sandwiches. Rice encourages Reem to eat. After a moment, she takes one and begins to devour it with surprising enthusiasm. While she eats, Reem asks what kind of meat is in the sandwich. Rice explains with a confident smirk that it is steamed monster meat, rich in protein, which he prepared for his post-training meal. He had assumed a noble lady would be reluctant to eat such a thing. But to his astonishment, she has already finished and politely asks for another serving. All he can do is stare, dumbfounded, as she gives him permission to do as he likes. Later, Reem brings up the training he had mentioned. She asks him what kind of training he does, prompting him to clarify that it is simply normal combat training. He explains that he was sweating from his recent exertions, which accounts for his current state. Reem seems to understand, noting that it explains his dress and the smell. A slight blush appears on her face as she looks at him. She struggles to compose herself, face flushed and hands held up defensively, insisting that nothing is wrong. Beside her, Rice announces his plan to resume training and invites Reem to watch. Internally, he admits that even though this was his goal, her direct reaction makes his own heart race. Her surprise is evident, but after a moment's hesitation, she agrees to accompany him. Seeing her empty basket, Rice assures her not to worry, promising he will have more food prepared for her later. From a safe distance, they now observe the training grounds where soldiers in full armor spar intensely with spears and swords, their movements swift and precise. Watching the drills, Commander Zangel recalls Rice's previous demand to go all out. His thoughts are interrupted by Rice himself, who approaches with a confident smirk and asks, "Will you train me?" Later, Zangel's subordinates express their disbelief at Rice's rapid improvement over just 2 weeks, remarking that such growth is unheard of, even within the ranks of the Corps. The commander processes their words. He realizes that Lord Rice is genuinely serious about learning to fight, and therefore, he must respond with equal seriousness. He concludes that Rice's talent is authentic, not merely a matter of efficiency. As he contemplates this, a soldier named Gehring approaches him. "I have a report for you," the soldier says. Nearby, Rice muses on his own reputation, wondering why the useless third son isn't around. Zangel turns his attention to the soldier, asking for the report. Gehring reports that monsters have escaped from the forest of atrocities. Zangel sharply rebukes him, reminding his vice commander not to refer to Rice in such a derogatory way, adding that the young lord is currently occupied welcoming his fiancée, Lady Reem. The report has already reached the head of the family. From his study, Lord Lubra Valadur delivers a single, chilling order: handle all monster matters with the Corps alone. That is all. Back on the training grounds, Zangel and Gehring discuss the dire implications. With no budget approved for this operation, the soldiers will lose faith in a Corps that cannot even maintain its equipment or supplies. Overhearing them, Zangel lets out a heavy sigh of frustration. He stood with his men, lost in thought as one of them, Gehring, questioned his loyalty. As a former royal knight, Gehring noted the commander would have plenty of offers elsewhere. He wondered why Zangel remained with the Valadur family. He had to admit, it would be a lie to say he never thought of leaving. But he had a reason to stay, a promise made to repay the final words of the former head of the family, Lord Lothril. A memory surfaced of the dying lord pleading with him to take care of his son, Lubra. His loyalty was rooted in deep gratitude. Lord Lothril had been a great benefactor who recognized his potential despite his commoner status, even recommending him to the Knight Order. However, what awaited him upon his return to Valadur was a stark change. Unlike his father, Lord Lubra had become the very image of a corrupt noble. His words of counsel never reached Lord Lubra, who had fallen under the influence of other corrupt nobles. Zangel had devoted himself to the Corps to repay his debt and for the sake of his subordinates, who were like family. But even that devotion was reaching its limit when a voice suddenly shouted his name. The door burst open to reveal Rice Valadur, who excitedly announced that he had received his family's permission. He stood before the commander, demanding to be trained as promised. As he looked at the young lord, a thought crossed Zangle's mind. If Rice were the rightful heir, perhaps he could change the fate of the territory. He dismissed it as a pointless notion, but a faint smile formed on his lips. Noticing the change, Gehring asked his commander if something good had happened. Commander Zangle calls an end to the training session, commending his men for their hard work and ordering them to disperse. In the training yard, Rice collapses to his knees, utterly spent. As dusk settles over the Valadeur estate, Rice reflects on the grueling session. He muses that Zangle seemed unusually zealous today, and while he hopes it was in response to his request to be taken seriously, he can't shake the feeling that the instructor was simply enjoying beating him senseless. He even briefly wonders if Zangle has a sadistic side. His thoughts then drift to his fiancée, Reem. He imagines her looking upon his thoroughly defeated form, certain that she must be completely disillusioned with him now. Adopting a smug expression, Rice steels himself, reasoning that he must accept this humiliation for the good of the world. He then turns to her, asking if she found the display boring. Contrary to his expectations, Reem bursts out that it was far from boring. It was incredibly delicious. Her cheeks are flushed, and she seems to have thoroughly enjoyed the monster meat sandwiches she was eating. She immediately becomes flustered by her own outburst, waving her hands dismissively as Rice watches with amusement. She tells him to forget what he just heard, clarifying that she was talking about his training. Composing herself, Reem confirms that she watched the entire training session. She remarks that she witnessed him holding a weapon for the very first time. Nearby, Rice sits on a bench, toweling his hair dry after cleaning up. She continues, expressing her astonishment at the intensity of the training, noting it was like a real battle. She was particularly surprised by how serious Commander Zangle was during the entire ordeal. Rice laughs, pointing out that he was simply beaten to a pulp. That's it, Reem exclaims with excitement. She declares that being able to withstand so many attacks without faltering shows a level of durability far beyond the ordinary, a trait she finds truly remarkable in both him and his instructor. He sat on the floor, listening as Reem observed that he possessed a durability comparable to even a seasoned adventurer. A smile touched his lips as he internally credited his resilience to the constant whippings he had endured, glad that she had been watching him so closely. As Reem shyly affirmed her observation, he recognized her keen analytical abilities from the game world manifesting before him. He resolved not to let this opportunity pass, deciding to leverage her skills as a strategist before beginning to explain his next request. His words, however, were poorly chosen. He suggested that since he was tired from training, she should use her body to heal him. Reem recoiled in shock at the implication, but he frantically waved his hands, shouting that he had no such intentions. He internally lamented that despite all his efforts since regaining his memories, Reem still saw him as the worst possible fiancé. While that perception might be for the world's benefit, he knew he no longer had time for such pointless games. His change in demeanor prompted Reem to ask if all his past cruelty towards her was merely a way to pass the time. He confirmed her suspicion, explaining that he was now desperate for time to become stronger and formally requested that she observe his training and provide her counsel. Stunned into silence, she could only utter his name. He looked at her with earnest sincerity, acknowledging that his words might be hard to believe, but insisting that this request was his only true intention. In response, she abruptly closed the distance between them, her face inches from his. He flinched back in alarm, wondering about her sudden advance and panicking that she had finally decided to end his life. But just as quickly, she pulled away with an apology. He was left bewildered by her ready acceptance of his proposal. As she agreed to help him again the next day, he could only wonder what had just transpired under the night sky. In the following days, his training sessions intensified. He realized that thanks to Reem's incredibly precise advice, like pointing out his tells when attacking, the effectiveness of his training had noticeably increased. He began to wonder if she, like Zangle, also possessed the coveted instructor skill. He also noticed that he was gradually getting along with the soldiers and maids. The only exception was the head cook, who complained that he couldn't procure monster meat fast enough. Rice sighed, realizing that while Reem's charm was winning over the entire household, he was still viewed with suspicion by some. Her popularity, it seemed, was as formidable in this reality as it was in the game. Within the Valadeur estate, Reem found herself addressed by an unseen figure. She noted with surprise that he had returned, as she had been under the impression he was still in the capital for a party. The man was revealed to be Legal, Rice's brother. With a smug grin, he explained that he had grown tired of the other woman and had heard she was visiting. He leaned in, questioning what he should do now. Legal continued his advances, noting that he'd heard Rice often speaks ill of her. He praised her beauty, calling it a rare sight even in the capital and a waste on Rice. He proposed that if she were his, he could provide her with a much better experience, questioning if she truly wanted to be engaged to his brother. His tone hardened as he dismissed the idea of gaining anything from her being disgraced. Instead, he grabbed her forcefully, suggesting it would be better to simply take her for himself while she was still Rice's fiancée. He loomed over her, a menacing grin on his face as he asked if she liked the idea. Just then, Rice appeared, drenched in sweat from his training with a towel slung over his shoulders. He greeted Reem, noting her early return, but internally kicked himself for intervening, as he had been trying to avoid precisely this kind of trouble with his brother. Legal's attention snapped to Rice, shouting about his sweaty appearance. He then lunged forward, mockingly attempting to give his brother a welcome home hug. Rice violently shoved him back, roaring that he had no interest in being embraced by another man and to stop before he caught his stench. He warned Legal to stay away, or he would report him to their father. Reem worriedly asked if defying his brother would worsen his position, but Rice assured her his reputation couldn't sink any lower. He privately mused that he needed to prevent Legal from interfering with their training, surprised by how strong his own sweat smelled. Reem then timidly asked if she could borrow his towel. A confused Rice confirmed she meant the sweaty one he was holding. She explained that she wanted it as a protective charm to ward off Legal if he approached her again. Understanding her reasoning, Rice agreed. She clutched the offered towel to her chest, her face flushing with a bright, grateful smile as she thanked him profusely. Rice watched her, thinking that Legal must have truly been a nuisance for her to be so pleased with a sweaty towel. Amidst such troubles, Reem's scheduled stay at the Valadur estate came to an end. He watches as Reem expresses her gratitude, stating that she enjoyed her stay thanks to him. A bit flustered, Rice simply acknowledges her words. With a bow, Reem informs him that she will return next month, and Rem stands by silently. As she departs the Valadur estate, Reem turns back for a final look. With renewed determination, she smiles and vows to herself that she will do her best to be useful on her next visit. During her journey home, Reem clutches the towel Rice gave her. She reflects that its scent, reminiscent of her home village, brings her comfort. She believes that no matter what unpleasantness she endures during her meetings with Rice, inhaling this scent will restore her spirits. She buries her face in the fabric, inhaling deeply. The scent is undeniably his, yet she realizes with a start that it lacks the foul undertone she always associated with his cruel smirks. It feels different, clean. This discrepancy reminds her of what her father, the head of the Straight family, taught her as a child. Their lineage is born with a special sense of smell, an ability to perceive hidden truths and lies. She recalls the scent from the towel again, wondering if it was merely sweat from training, yet sensing a more fundamental change in Rice than she'd ever noticed before. Her thoughts drift to her father's initial apprehension. He had warned her against the engagement, questioning the wisdom of aligning with the Valadur family. Reem had stood firm, insisting she only wanted to do what she could for him and for their village. She remembers the context of that decision. For years, her village suffered from poor harvests, yet the Valadur family continued to impose heavy taxes. To secure favorable treatment and defy her father's wishes, Reem accepted the engagement. At the time, she harbored a naive hope, like a princess in a fairy tale, wondering if her fiancé might come to truly love her. However, that fantasy was brutally shattered the moment she met Rice. His words echoed in her memory, a sneering declaration that her only value was her physical body. His cruelty was relentless. He told her he had no interest in a woman of her low standing and would one day find someone better. He called her boring, taunting her to hate him because he enjoyed seeing her pained expression. His words and constant harassment had shredded her spirit, leaving her stressed to the breaking point. And yet, she recalls when she arrived for her visit, Rice greeted her with a gentle smile, his face free of its usual malice. He had asked if her journey was safe. She realizes now that the change in his scent wasn't due to soap or perfume. It was as if he had become a different person entirely. At that moment, the immense stress that had been crushing her began to lift. So lost in thought that she arrived home without realizing it, Reem was startled by her father's worried cry. He greeted her, but his relief quickly turned to alarm as he demanded to know the source of the intense scent of sweat clinging to her. Reem, holding up the towel she had acquired, explained that the smell came from it. Her father recoiled, ordering her to get rid of it before realizing that his own revulsion meant the scent couldn't be hers. His panic escalated as he questioned what it was, and whether something unspeakable had happened at the Valadur estate. Reem quietly dismissed his fears, but a realization formed in her mind. Her father's perception of the scent was completely different from her own. This discrepancy, she decided, required further investigation. Inside the Valadur family library, having successfully navigated the tense visit from his fiancée, Rice throws his arms up in triumph. He exclaims with joy that he can finally use magic, turning to his instructor, Zangel, to thank him for the training. Zangel, however, calmly congratulates Lord Rice, but asserts that the achievement is the result of Rice's own hard work. His instructors suggest they take a break now that they've seen results. Rice agrees, but internally reflects that there's no need for false modesty. He knows that in the original story, his villainous counterpart was never able to use magic, making this achievement a significant departure from his doomed fate. Feeling emboldened, he decides to test his new abilities further. He muses that he could use magic to call a maid from the staff's quarters to the library. Concentrating, he calls out, asking for someone to bring them tea. The attempt backfires. Rice shouts in denial, covering his face in shame as he realizes he was just trying to order tea like a common master. Below, Zangel clutches his head in exasperation, muttering that while Rice's spatial magic is convenient, he must be more careful about how he uses it. The memory of the incident is mortifying. He recalls the piercing glares from the maids and realizes how close he came to letting his old, arrogant habits resurface. It was a careless mistake, and he acknowledges that Zangel's presence saved him from further embarrassment. To avoid being discovered for sneaking out, Rice has donned a disguise, a dark, hooded cloak, and a mask. Having used his newly acquired speed magic to slip out into the city, he now finds himself completely disoriented, looking around and wondering where he is. He feels a growing anxiety. His knowledge from his past life is useless, as the city in the game's timeline was destroyed. He recalls the game's ironclad rule for when a player is stuck: talk to everyone, but realizes that in this reality, asking for directions might just mark him as a suspicious outsider. Just as this thought crosses his mind, a small girl suddenly runs up to him, startling him from his worries. He wonders if some new event has just been triggered. The girl looks up at him cheerfully and offers to take him with her. He looks down, confused, as the child points toward a nearby building. She proudly declares that it's her home. Rice's gaze follows her finger, his attention fixed on the unfamiliar structure. He is startled when the little girl he just met calls out, "Big Sis Inertia," to a newcomer. The woman, Inertia, thanks the child for her help and tells her not to worry. Rice is stunned, recognizing the name instantly. His mind races. The pink twintails, a distinctive outfit, are unmistakable. It is the Inertia he knows from the game. He recalls that she is an optional companion character with a popularity rivaling even Reem's. He remembers her story beginning at an orphanage, not here, and wonders if it is wise to get involved with her. She turns to him, correctly guessing that he is lost and has no real business in this part of town. Explaining that she knows many people at the guild, she offers to lead him there and help him get the information he needs. Seeing an opportunity, Rice decides to explain his circumstances to her. He reflects on her kindness. It is this helpful nature, he realizes, that makes her so popular, earning her adoration from fans who wish she were their big sister or praise her motherly aura. He understands now and accepts her help. As they prepare to leave, the little girl waves goodbye, telling her big brother not to get lost again. Rice promises he will be careful. Once the child is gone, Inertia turns to Rice, remarking that he should be grateful to her. He is taken aback, muttering "big brother" to himself. Inertia leads him to the Valader branch of the Adventurers Guild. A receptionist welcomes them, immediately recognizing Inertia and informing her of a request from the Dragon Ravens clan. Inertia dismisses it as a routine matter, but Rice notes that the clan name is also from the game. Inertia then asks the receptionist if she can handle Rice's request to register as a new adventurer. The receptionist agrees and asks for his name, which Inertia admits she never got. To avoid any risk of his identity being discovered, Rice gives his name from his past life, Rio. The receptionist, Rita, registers him under the unusual name. With her part done, Inertia thanks Rio for his help earlier and departs to take a quest, telling him to pay it forward. As he processes her words, Rita offers him a map of the local dungeons so he won't get lost again. He gratefully accepts the map, then immediately asks if the Silent Cavern is currently accessible. Rita confirms that it is and offers to show him the available quest for that location. He apologizes for his outburst, explaining to the guild receptionist that the information she provided is quite different from what he understood. The receptionist, Rita, looks on in confusion, questioning the adventurer she knows as Rio. He dismisses her recruitment attempt as clumsy before shifting topics to ask if he can also sell monster materials at the guild. Rita confirms that they will gladly accept them and pay a reward based on the materials provided. He internally notes that this was not the intended purpose, even in the game. His question seems to catch her off guard, and she stammers for a moment, a blush rising to her cheeks. After composing herself, she cheerfully tells him to wait, but her expression turns to one of utter shock. He has produced an enormous pile of monster materials, prompting her to ask in disbelief if he truly acquired all of this from the Silent Cavern. She presses him, wondering how he could have possibly found so much in a dungeon known for its scarcity of monsters, remarking that it must be a great place to earn money. Dejected, he mutters that the one thing he was looking for didn't appear, leaving her to wonder why he is so downcast. He had been exploiting a known glitch from the game world. In a specific part of the beginner's dungeon, the Silent Cavern, a monster called a stone rabbit, which shouldn't exist there, would appear. This exploit became a standard strategy for players. However, despite gathering a mountain of materials, he shouts in frustration that the rare necklace of growth failed to drop. His method was simple. He stood facing a dungeon wall and repeatedly stomped his foot. This high-speed foot stomping was the most efficient way to generate encounters, allowing him to earn rewards and experience. He realizes this glitch from the game persists in this world. Finally, after much effort, a stone rabbit drops the coveted necklace of growth, an item that boosts experience gain and stats. As he prepares to return to the mansion for more training, the adventurer Inertia approaches with a cheerful smile. She offers him some popular sweets from the capital, noting his good reputation and asking if her big brother has a moment to spare. He considers her offer. He recalls that in the game, food items could provide status boosts, and dishes made with monster materials were particularly effective. He looks at inertia and begins to accept, saying, then, that. Meanwhile, back at the Validar estate, the head cook anxiously pleads with Commander Zangel. As Rice returns, the cook welcomes him home. Rice, his face grim and shadowed, interrupts, declaring that he is finished. He finds the estate's cook, Ryo, in a state of panic. The cook explains that the larder is completely out of monster meat, but he is being pressured to prepare a dish immediately and has no time to travel to another town to procure more. Rice suggests that any dish made with monster meat should suffice, as Liana looks on with a fond expression. The cook, however, despairs that this failure will get him fired, leaving him unable to support his newborn child. Seeing the man's desperation, Rice produces a large cut of meat, identifying it as fresh stone rabbit. Ryo is stunned, recognizing the meat from his knowledge of the game. When Rice suggests making a stew, the cook's worry returns. He points out that stone rabbit meat is notoriously tough and very difficult to prepare properly. Confidently drawing on his game knowledge, Rice instructs him to combine the meat with refreshed green and spice blossom. He admits he only knows the right ingredients, not the technique, and asks Ryo to teach him the proper cooking methods in return. A wave of relief washes over Ryo. He confirms he has both ingredients in the kitchen and, with renewed hope, exclaims that he will start on the stew right away. As the cook hurries off, Zangel appears, noting that Rice went out using magic. Rice internally acknowledges that Zangel has been covering for his secret combat training. The instructor voices his concern, however, worrying that Rice's current success might lead to overconfidence and recklessness. Zangel mentions he heard Rice was out hunting. In response, Rice presents him with a small, wrapped package, explaining it is a token of gratitude for helping to conceal his training from others. Calling it a simple souvenir, Rice hands over the gift. Zangel is deeply moved, stating that as the commander entrusted with the Corps, he feels an immense, unpayable debt of gratitude toward Rice. The instructor's thoughts turn to the training grounds. He proudly observes the soldiers sparring, their movements faster and more skilled than ever. Zangel reflects that Rice's dedication has inspired everyone, dramatically boosting the entire Corps' morale. He continues his report to Rice, praising the new training regimen for rapidly improving everyone's strength. However, he brings up the next major hurdle. The budget is insufficient to provide the soldiers with proper equipment. Rice looks away, troubled, admitting that is a problem beyond his ability to solve. He is taken aback by Zangel's fervent gratitude. The commander insists that Rice ask anything of them, but Rice demurs, explaining that he was merely trying to make up for his own blunder. Zangel's intensity is startling. As the commander clutches his uniform, Rice realizes with a jolt that he hadn't understood just how much Zangel had been worrying about the situation. Later, Zangel explains that he never thought Rice acted with ill intent, because the maids had told him that Lord Rice is the only one in the Validar household who treats them with genuine sincerity. In the main hall, Rem excitedly announces to the other maids that they've received apology sweets from Rice, which one of them recognizes as a trendy new confection. The stone rabbit stew is a resounding success. The cook, Rice, and Zangel all marvel at how delicious it is. A soldier weeps with joy, thanking Rice and explaining that this success has saved his job. Rice reflects that the initial problem was his own fault, but the cook, his face beaming, is simply overjoyed that Lord Rice is enjoying his food. The cook elaborates that his own family is full of picky eaters, so seeing the smile on the face of someone enjoying his cooking makes him truly happy. The sentiment resonates with Rice, who briefly pictures Liana's smiling face as she eats. The cook, Ryo, asks Rice to try the stew, noting how unbelievably tender the meat has become. Delighted, Rice asks if he can have it made again, and Ryo happily agrees. Rice muses that this will make his tedious monster hunts more enjoyable. The scene flashes to him in his hooded gear, triumphantly felling a monster and discovering an item he recognizes from a game, the Necklace of Growth.